Welcome back, everyone, to a new episode of Sports Bros. My name is Jordan Score, taking over for Ethan's role today. I'm joined by Ryan.
Ryan, and then we got special guest Luke Blackman.
Nice to have you. All right, so let's just jump into baseball real quick. Aaron Judge hit the 62 home runs he was looking to get. So it's very cool and happy to be part of New York fan base for him to see the 62 home runs. Do you think he's going to win the MVP?
I think no doubt. I think he's got to win it. He's got a monumental season. If he won the Triple Crown, absolutely no doubt in my mind. But there's just a little bit of doubt that he didn't win that. But still, he's so close, and he had such a tremendous season that I have no other. I really don't see another way around it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know how you give this to anyone else. I mean, 62 home runs. There's an argument to be made that it's the most home runs in MLB history for obvious reasons. If you don't give it to Aaron Judge, I don't know what we're doing.
People will look at Ohtani too because he's a pitcher and a hitter, but at the same time, I feel like Judge has had one of those seasons where it's just hard to not give him the MVP. So hopefully Judge wins the MVP.
And I'd also say that MVP, I know we had this debate last year on our other radio show, but MVP is the most valuable player. And sure, Shohei Ohtani, yes, extremely valuable. I would understand that argument and maybe even side with that argument that he is the most valuable for the Angels. But when the Yankees were slumping hard, Aaron Judge was not. He was kind of putting on the backpack and carrying them as much as he could. So I would still give the MVP to Aaron Judge.
And the Angels aren't in the playoffs, and the Yankees are. So
yeah.
Judge was the most valuable player to his team in the American League, like Ryan said. So I agree with both you guys' takes. Playoffs, you got the Rays versus the Guardians. The Guardians just won their first game. So I think the Guardians are going to win that because for a wild card, I just got to give it to the home team because it's best of three. And I feel like when you have home field advantage, like you're going to win those games no matter what. So I got Guardians over Rays, Blue Jays over Mariners, Cardinals over Phillies, and Mets over Padres.
Plus, and I mean, I'd take the Guardians over the Rays too, especially because they won already today, 2-1. And the other game happening right now, Phillies and Cardinals, is tied 0-0 in the top of the fourth. I don't really know. I'm not really sure. I'm kind of riding the Mariners a little bit this year. I'm not going to pick them to go all the way, but I don't know individual matchups, but in the long run, I think Yankees over Dodgers.
Yankees over Dodgers.
Yankees over Dodgers is my pick. Yeah.
I would say the Mets too. Sorry to cut you off, but I would say the Mets too. But they just look so like they have the toughest schedule in my opinion because they got to face the Padres and then they got to face the Dodgers right after that. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
I am here for the Subway Series. Yankees and Mets in the World Series. It'd be amazing to watch. In terms of this round, I'll also take the Guardians. I'll take the Mariners over the Blue Jays. They're very close in terms of winning everything. I also will take the Phillies. I feel like there has to be one home team that's just completely suspect, and that's the St. Louis Cardinals for me.
Yeah.
And then I'll also take the Mets.
Good picks. Also, one last thing I want to point out in MLB before we shift over to the NFL is that the Dodgers, I believe, have the winningest and National League team since the 1906 Cubs with 111 wins. So the clear pick, if I was a betting man, would be the Dodgers with their wins. But
anything could fall apart, and we've seen it happen before with all across sports. And I'm not saying that the Dodgers are going to fall apart, especially because I have them going to the World Series. But one thing I will say is that the Mets, they had such an amazing season, and then recently they just been falling off. This happens every year with the Mets, so I have no faith in them. Although I would love to see a Subway Series. That's like my biggest dream for baseball right now, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like the Mets completely fell apart and let the Braves take the division. So I feel like the Mets aren't there like to compete in the playoffs. I feel like they lost their fire a little bit. So it's interesting to see how the Mets will bounce back against the Padres. So going over to the NFL, the first game,
last night's game, the Colts and
Broncos. What are you guys' takes on that?
Man, okay, that was just such an awful game. And I mean, there was 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions combined by the two teams, 2 on each side. There was not a touchdown, like no touchdown scored, 4 interceptions. I mean, field goal kickers, give it to them. I mean, they were good, but oh my gosh, like overtime and the score is 12-9. Like, that's awful. So the big takeaway from this game and from this season so far is the Broncos, I think, for me personally, because the Broncos, everyone had really high hopes and they're doing okay. Like last week was, I think, the only week that they scored more than 20 points in a game. So that's not good. And especially if you get a quarterback like Russell Wilson, you should be producing a lot more. So Colts, I'm kind of surprised they got the win. They've been up and down every week. I really don't know how to look at them, but the big takeaway for me was the Broncos.
I think that this is one of your earliest forms of the tank bowl for the year. I don't think either of these teams are going anywhere near the playoffs. They both just look tragically bad. They both have quarterbacks that are supposed to be really good coming into this season, new terrain for Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson, and neither of them is really panning out. And so it's unfortunate, but I do believe that the Colts and Broncos are just going to be like third place teams at best in both of their divisions.
Do you think it's not working out for Russell Wilson in Denver, or do you think Russell Wilson just lost his pass? Well, not his passing, but Russell Wilson just completely lost his game, not being with
that. I mean, that's tough to say. And I mean, anytime someone goes to a new team, there's going to be like a learning curve, of course. But I don't know. Like he was doing fine. Like he doesn't have like an exceptional season last year, but like he started off strong and he kind of like fell off a little bit. I don't know. The Seahawks, I don't know. Geno Smith is outperforming him right now. So I guess maybe he's washed completely, but I don't know. He was good for a while. So I think it's still in that learning curve and eventually he will be good, but we'll see.
I think he's washed for this year. I don't think the Broncos are going, like I said, I don't think the Broncos are going very far this year. I think hopefully he'll start to figure it out towards the end of the year. I'd like Russell Wilson to be better than he is right now. But I think for right now, yeah, I think the injury and the transition has just not been a kind one to him.
Yeah, I completely agree with both your takes. I think the Colts and Broncos right now aren't going anywhere, especially if the Colts don't have Jonathan Taylor. They don't really have an offense. And with Russell Wilson missing KJ Hamler wide open in the end zone to lose the game, I don't see how I don't see how Russell Wilson can make up for that play. So I think the Broncos and Colts are not really going to go anywhere this year. Yeah. So next game is Giants-Packers. I have the Packers winning this game. It's really hard to go against Aaron Rodgers when he's going against Daniel Jones. So
that is a really fair pick. And now going into like a little of the rapid fire style that we had last week, where we just kind of give our picks with a little explanation and stuff. I'm also going to take the Packers, but the Giants are surprising me this year. And the only reason, like I said in every radio show, is Saquon. Saquon is looking like the number one running back in the league right now. And the Packers have been looking fine. They've been looking pretty good, coming off a good win. I guess that wasn't last week. Two weeks ago against the Buccaneers. Yeah. 2 weeks ago. I'm going to pick the Packers. Like Jordan said, Daniel Jones versus Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers wins that all day long. So that's all I got to say. Packers by 10.
I also think the Packers are going to take this, but I do think it's going to be like another suspect win where the Packers just barely squeeze out a win. And Aaron Rodgers goes up to the mic afterwards and like, this is not the way that we win, even though they're 4-1. And it's just, they just look like a weird team right now to me.
They did like scrape away against a win when they were going up against the Patriots, and the Patriots had their third string quarterback out there and they only won in overtime. So maybe the Giants can pull off the upset with Saquon, because Saquon's looking like the comeback player of the year right now. So moving on to the next game, we got Lions and Patriots. I have Patriots only because the Lions are really good on offense, but they give up so many yards. And I believe they gave up 555 yards to the Seahawks last week. So if you can score a lot, but you can't provide on defense, there's no way you can win in the NFL.
You know, I'm riding the Lions train right now. Even though they coming off a loss last week, 48-45, their offense is just through the roof right now. They're just producing like crazy. So even though they took the L last week against the Seahawks, Geno Smith, wow, really went off last week. I mean, the Seahawks in general are just doing so well. But even though the Patriots lost last week to the Packers and it was a close game, I think that the Lions offense is better than the Patriots defense, and I think that's really what is going to win the game for them this week. Like, the Lions defense isn't great. I don't think the Patriots offense is really that great. So I think the Lions defense, that's really just going to win the game. So I'll say by 7.
Give me the Lions in this one also. I think the Lions are just amazing. They're such an enigma of a team. They have 140 points on offense, but they're 1-3. I think it'll be another high-scoring game for both teams. I just think that's what the Lions are right now. They put up a lot of points and they give up a lot of points. But especially if Amon-Ra St. Brown starts, give me the Lions.
I need him to start my fantasy for me too.
Me too.
Because he's been putting up a lot of points. So if he plays, then it's good for me too. So next game is Browns Chargers. I have the Chargers. Nick Chubb is, like, in my opinion, the best running back so far this year, and probably the best running back performance I've seen in a while out of any running back. But it's so hard to bet against Justin Herbert, and the only thing that I can see the Chargers losing this game is because all the injuries they have. But I just think the Chargers can beat the Browns.
I'm going to agree with you there. I think the Chargers are going to win this game. The Browns, are looking kind of surprisingly, I would say, to everyone. They're looking decent with Jacoby Brissett in there as their quarterback, without Deshaun Watson, of course, for many weeks still. But I think the Chargers are just an overall better team. Justin Herbert looking great, just like last year. A couple tough games this year, but overall pretty good. So I'm going to pick the Chargers. Close game. Chargers by 3.
I'm also going to take the Chargers. I think it'll be a good game. I think this is definitely going to be a lower scoring game than a lot of people think. I think that Browns defense is really good. And I don't love the O-line of the Chargers. And so I think that'll be an interesting matchup to watch. But I do think the Chargers overall will just be able to sustain a level of success on offense that the Browns can't keep up with.
Good picks. I would say that might be the best game of the week, to be honest with you. But moving on to, in my opinion, the most boring matchup this week. We got the Texans versus the Jaguars.
Talking about.
And I'd say it's gonna be boring. Well, it should be an okay game, but Dameon Pierce on the Texans, that kid's so good. He leads all rookies. He set a franchise rookie record for the Texans with a 75-yard TD last week. So Dameon Pierce is establishing himself on the Texans, and I feel like that's the only player right now the Texans have working for them right now. And the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence fumbled the ball 4 times and threw an interception in the red zone. So Trevor Lawrence some weeks is so good, and then some weeks is just terrible. So it should be interesting to see how this one plays out.
So I'm gonna pick the Jaguars in this game because, sure, you had the turnovers last week, like you said, Jordan, but they still only lost to the Eagles 29-21. So that says something. And the Eagles are, I think, number 1 in the power rankings still, or at least they were last week. So Jaguars versus Eagles, they only lose by 8 points. Jaguars versus Texans, I think they're gonna win, not blowout, but a decent size. So I'm going to say Jaguars by 10 just because of that. And especially coming off of the weeks before where they beat the Chargers like 38-10, and then they beat the Colts 24-0, I think. So I think the Jaguars are just an overall better team, which is really surprising to me this year. Maybe it was the curse of Urban Meyer last year that really got them down low. But I think the Texans aren't really looking that great. They surprised us a couple times this year, but Jaguars overall better team.
I think the Jaguars are about to cement themselves as the top of the AFC South. I'm expecting a blowout. I think the Jags are going to win by at least 21. I have no faith in the Texans whatsoever. They're just not. There's just nothing there for me, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just not happening. And the Jags really do look really good. Like you said, they lost to the only undefeated team in the NFL by a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. So that's really good. I think if they can keep up that success, so they'll easily run away with the division.
I agree with both those takes. Texans are 32nd ranked in the power rankings, and the Jaguars did only lose by a small margin to the Eagles, so they should run away with this game. So next one is Falcons Buccaneers. I have the Buccaneers. The Falcons do have a good ground game, but it's so hard to bet against Tom Brady as well. And I feel like they have the offensive weapons that can carry them to get a win this week.
We're all agreeing here today, which is not too unusual, but a little unusual for being this agreeable. But I'm also going to pick the Buccaneers. The Falcons right now, Cordell Patterson's out, I believe, right, for a couple weeks. I'm not certain about that, but he's out this week. So Algier, I don't know how to pronounce it. He's like a rookie running back, I believe. He is going to be taking over. I have him on my fantasy team, so let's hope he actually does something. I know we always talk about fantasy in here, but it's easy to connect fantasy and football because they just go so well together. But I'm going to pick the Buccaneers. Buccaneers are just a better team. Falcons are looking okay this year. Marcus Mariota is not doing that bad. I'm liking him there, but Buccaneers are just a better team. Tom Brady versus Marcus Mariota. Come on, like Tom Brady's going to win that. Plus a lot more healthy wide receivers and such for the Buccaneers. So it's not really a question. The Buccaneers defense is also really good, even though they lost to the Chiefs last week. And honestly, the game was not really close at all for the whole, except like the first quarter probably. So not even the first quarter. They were down early and they just didn't come back. So I'm going to pick the Buccaneers. It's just the Buccaneers are better.
I would so badly like for the Falcons to win this game, and I just don't see any way that it happens, especially with Cordell Patterson being out. So I'll also take the Bucs, but I think it'll be closer than a lot of people think. Again, I think this Bucs team is suspicious in terms of not really producing the offense that we're so used to seeing. The defense has been playing really well, like it usually does, but that offense just hasn't been as high powered as it has been the years past.
Yeah. So, moving on, the Bills against Steelers. This is going to be a 100-0 win for the Bills, in my opinion. The Bills have one of the best defenses in the league. Jordan Poyer had a great game against the Ravens. They came back against the Ravens, the Bills did. So, they have the championship mentality with them already, coming back against a great team in the Ravens. And the Steelers, I mean, this is nothing much to say for the Steelers with Kenny Pickett going, and I just feel like the Bills will just dominate this week.
I would have to agree with you, and again, we're gonna agree. I'm sure. I unless something crazy happens, Luke, but I think we're all gonna agree on this one. The Bills are just a really pretty much not unstoppable, but a really strong, powerful team, and the Steelers are not. However, I will say, even though Kenny Pickett had 3 interceptions, I think last week against the Jets, one of them was at the end of the game, and another one was a tip ball. I think the third one was also a tip ball, but it was a little less it was a little more Kenny Pickett's fault. But his rushing attack worked pretty well for the Steelers, and I think, yeah, exactly. So I think making the switch to Kenny Pickett will be good for the Steelers, but still, it's against the Bills. Like it's not gonna be that great. It's gonna be a really tough matchup for him this week. I'm assuming he's projected to play over Mitch Trubisky. So I'm gonna pick the Bills blowout. I can't say 42-0. That's too bad. I'll say 42-10.
It is confirmed that Mitchell Trubisky, Kenny Pickett is QB1 going forward. So he will be playing against the Bills, which is just trial by fire for the poor rookie. I think this is just going to be an absolute decimation. I think the Bills had a really good comeback last week against the Ravens, and they're just going to continue that dominance against a Steelers team that doesn't really have much going for them. I will go ahead and say 42-0. I think the Steelers might put up a couple field goals at most. I don't know that they score a touchdown in this game.
I think it is the right move for the Steelers, though, to go ahead with Kenny Pickett over the Nickelodeon most valuable player. So now we got Dolphins Jets. Now, I know I've been hating on the Jets a lot, but with Tua out and the Jets coming off a win, and Zach Wilson, I believe, had 2 back-to-back drives with the touchdown against the last team they played last week. So
Steelers,
yeah, the Steelers. So I would say the Jets are going to probably beat the Dolphins this week, which is going to be my big upset this week.
Wow. Well, I love to hear that, and I did not expect that to come out of your mouth. But I'm cool with it. It's tough. It's a tough decision to make, and I've picked the Jets in every game so far this season, and I'm gonna ride that train even further because here's why: with Tua out, and the Dolphins have really been scrutinized a lot by many people everywhere, and their focus is solely on Tua and the Tua situation and everything going on with the lawsuit. And the Dolphins, are they're not a mess right now, but it could be a mess. Like their minds are really distracted right now. So with that being said, obviously Tua not playing, it's going to be totally different game, of course. But they still have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. However, on the Jets side, they got Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. Now, there was a poll, I forget who it was by, and I should know that, but there was a poll of the top 10 rookies, and Sauce Gardner was number 1 on that list. And Breece Hall was on there too, and Garrett Wilson also, just to point out, on the top 10 list. But I won't get any further into that. Sauce Gardner looking really good this year. He had a breakup last week, and which led to an interception by a teammate, which ensued a touchdown winning drive for Zach Wilson and the Jets. So that was a huge play, and that was all because of Sauce Gardner. And, of course, I forget who made the interception. It might have been Eccles, but I'm not sure about that. And the two of them, and that was Sauce Gardner's breakup was huge. And on the other side, DJ Reed last week, I don't know how much the number has changed because they haven't come out with it yet that I know of. But last week, before the game last week, DJ Reed's QB rating against him was 2.9, which was second lowest in the NFL. So if you have those two cornerbacks playing against, sure, it's going to be an amazingly tough matchup for them with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, but they're really good cornerbacks. So if you don't have Tua and you have those two performing at their peak level as they can right now, I could see the Jets winning this game. And Zach Wilson, when it mattered last week in the fourth quarter, he came out and played. So, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough win for the Jets, but I'm going to say by 3, Jets are winning.
I think we're forgetting who the backup for the Dolphins is. Teddy Bridgewater is a real quarterback.
Teddy.
He, it's kind of fun. It's an ironic thing that Teddy Bridgewater is taking over for a concussion injury when that's what sidelined him and trapped him in the backup quarterback carousel. I think that the Dolphins are going to win this game. I think Teddy Bridgewater is a competent enough quarterback, and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are the best wide receiver duo in the league. I think it'll be a close game. I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter, but I think I'll take the Dolphins by 3.
And might I just add that Teddy Bridgewater, yes, he's a great backup for the Dolphins. Don't quote me on it, but Teddy Bridgewater, first quarter, sacked by Jermaine Johnson, out for the season. Teddy Bridgewater has a thing of getting hurt. I don't know.
You do that to Teddy Bridgewater, I'm going to be so sad. He does not deserve that at all, but I definitely would say Teddy Bridgewater over Kenny Pickett any day. So,
I mean, yes, I do. I actually think that's going to happen. No, but and I don't want it to happen either because I like Teddy Bridgewater and I don't want him to do well against the Jets. That's all I want. But also, I will say one thing with the NFL news is that there are people calling for Tua to retire from the NFL right now.
Saw that, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen or if that's even a consideration of Tua, but that's just something to keep in mind with the Dolphins being really focused on that and not on this game this week. They might think it's a really easy victory against the Jets. It won't be. Sorry, Dolphins.
I think the Dolphins are focusing more on the Tua than the game against the Jets. I mean, of course, you're gonna have to prepare for the Jets, but their minds are probably on Tua's health and his safety right now. But I just say the Jets are probably gonna squeeze out a win because they're at home. Their defense is looking good each week and getting better. And hopefully Teddy puts on a good performance, but I got to go with Zach Wilson. But if the Jets do lose next week, I'm going to be on you. All right, so now moving on to my Vikings against the Chicago Bears. I'm going to go with the Vikings just because Justin Jefferson had an insane game last week. And I think with that kind of caliber player on your team, you can win against anybody. And if he goes off, I think the Vikings are going to beat the Bears. And also, one thing I want to point out is that Justin Fields set a season high with 11 completions last week. So I have the Vikings beating the Bears. Just off that stat alone by Justin Fields.
Okay, honestly, I think the Bears should be number 32 on the power rankings instead of the Texans. The Bears are surprisingly getting wins, but they're not looking very good at all. And I think the Vikings are just a better team. They won. It was a close game last week. I think it was 28-25. Vikings beat the Saints with Andy Dalton in his QB. And, the Saints kind of looked okay with Andy Dalton. Like, Andy Dalton's not a bad backup at all. So I won't give that much credit to the Saints backup and the Saints team, aside from having Andy Dalton in there. I won't give too much credit to them for having a backup and still being close because Andy Dalton's good. But I think the Vikings are just a better team than the Bears. So that's really all I have to say. Vikings are going to win this game.
I don't think this is going to be close at all. I think the Vikings are absolutely going to slaughter the Bears. I would, Justin Jefferson, 3 touchdowns. Why not? Just because he can. I think he's just going to absolutely destroy that secondary. And it's not going to be a close game. I think the Vikings win by, once again, I think there's a lot of blowouts this week. I think the Vikings win by 3 touchdowns.
I like your picks. So Commanders against the Titans. I have the Titans because Derrick Henry does look to be back to his former self. Last week, he put up a great game, and I think he can just demolish the Commanders' defense. So I got Derrick Henry with the Titans.
This is tougher than I think it should be, because Commanders, they started off strong. Last 2 games, not great. Titans started off not great, and then their last 2 games looked okay, pretty good. So they're kind of even teams ish, but obviously one will come out on top. Well, hopefully one will come out on top this week and it doesn't end in a tie. Can you imagine if one of us picked the tie? That'd be crazy. I'm gonna pick the Titans just because they're coming off of a victory versus the Commanders kind of coming off of a not so great loss. So it was like 25-10. They lost to the Cowboys. So Commanders, it's hard to say because they started off great and then they've just not fallen apart. I wouldn't say they've fallen apart. They're just not looking as good as they used to. But I'm just going to give it to the Titans. Like Jordan said, Derrick Henry is kind of looking like himself again after some injuries in the past couple years. So hopefully he remains healthy. I like Derrick Henry, but I think Titans are going to win this game.
I think both of these teams are incredibly inconsistent. And so I'll actually take the Commanders in this. I think it'll be very low scoring. I think a lot of games this week are blowouts or low scoring. I don't think there are very many high scoring games this week. I just think that the Titans are one of those teams where it's up and down all year. And so I think the Commanders will pull out a pretty close win here, and I'll take Commanders by 3.
The last thing I want to say is that the Titans, they're outscored in the second half by opponents 64-7 in 4 games. And the Commanders last week, 11 penalties for 136 yards against the Cowboys. So this should be a tough game to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So now Seahawks, Saints. I have the Seahawks winning this game. I'm just going to ride with Geno Smith. I feel like the Seahawks can pull out a win against the Saints. And they put up 555 yards against the Lions. So I think they can do the same. Well, not the same, but put up at least 300 yards against the Saints defense, in my opinion.
So I know for the Saints this week, it's going to be Andy Dalton again. But like I was just saying, I don't think that's too big of a bad thing for the Saints. He looked pretty good. But that being said, I'm riding right there with you, Jordan. I really want the Seahawks to put up another 40-something point game this week. That would be outstanding. I'm going to pick the Seahawks right in that victory from last week. Sure, it'll be a tougher matchup against the Saints, but I'm picking the Seahawks.
I'm going to take the Saints in this one. I think they had a really good game against the Vikings. And for me, the Vikings are vastly superior to the Seahawks. And so I think the Saints get a nice win after a loss that was probably pretty tough to swallow, especially when you feel like you're so close to winning that game and then you just come up shorthanded there. I think the Seahawks had an explosion of offense against the Lions because they're the Lions. And I think the Saints have a better defense that'll be able to shut down the Seahawks offense just a bit more.
One thing I will say about the Seahawks is that they were up by a good amount last week, and they only ended up winning by 3, I think. So they really let the Lions back into the game. I was kind of rooting for the Lions a little bit, but I was also rooting for the Seahawks. It was hard to choose. And I would like to apologize for last week. We forgot to cover the Lions-Seahawks game. And we all noticed it right afterwards, and we're like, oh, Lions are winning this game for sure. And then Seahawks came out and surprised us. So sorry for not mentioning that game. We breezed right by it. But I'm going to ride the Seahawks.
I hope Geno Smith has another great week because I just love seeing Geno Smith going off for the Seahawks, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So the next game is the Panthers against the 49ers. And Baker Mayfield is scared right now, in my opinion. Baker Mayfield has not done anything for the Panthers, and the 49ers last week against the Rams totaled 7 sacks against Stafford. So I think the 49ers are just gonna demolish Baker Mayfield and make Baker Mayfield wish that he was never a quarterback in the NFL.
I'm right there with you. I think the Panthers are just looking not great this year. I just honestly I think the 49ers are looking probably a little better, maybe without Trey Lance in there now for the rest of the season. I think it's probably a good thing for this year, but not a good thing overall for the next couple of years with Jimmy Garoppolo in there now. But Deebo Samuel is a much bigger factor with Jimmy Garoppolo in there. And I think Deebo Samuel is such a big playmaker that he makes the difference for the 49ers. So I'm going to pick the 49ers, and it's not going to be close.
I completely agree. I think the 49ers are coming off a great win against the Rams. And, Baker Mayfield is showing why he was traded and why he will soon be in the midst of quarterback controversy in Carolina. I think that the Panthers maybe score a touchdown, and I think that front seven for the 49ers just absolutely mauls that O-line of Baker Mayfield.
You can quote me on this, and I'm sorry, Panther fans, but Baker Mayfield is better in commercials than he is on the NFL football field.
I'm with you. Right now, at least.
So, going on to the Eagles-Cardinals game. I always say the Cardinals look better on paper than in the field. I feel like the Cardinals don't have any rhythm, but I'm excited for when DeAndre Hopkins comes back because now he has Marquise Brown to pair up with. And I feel like the Cardinals can start getting better on the offensive side. So that's something to look out, and I'm looking forward to that. But right now I'm going with the Eagles because the Eagles, Miles Sanders had a great rushing game last week, and Jalen Hurts looks like a solid, great quarterback for that offense. So I got the Eagles beating the Cardinals.
Yeah, you know what? I should pick the Eagles because they just seem to be like an overall better team, and the Cardinals are just not looking as strong as they did at the beginning of last year. They're kind of looking more like they did at the end of last year. But I have a feeling, and this feeling is that the Cardinals are going to beat the Eagles this week, and it's going to be a shock. It'll be a close game in the 20s. I don't really have great explanations for why it's going to happen, just a feeling. So I'm gonna pick the Cardinals like 29-25 or something like that. That's a weird score, but sure.
This is absolutely a trap game for the Eagles. I feel like this is, feeling good. You're 4-0. The Cardinals are an ugly 2-2. But I really do think this is where the Cardinals kind of find a little bit of rhythm. And I agree with you. I think they're going to beat the Eagles. It'll be a low-scoring game where it's close down to the wire, and I think Kyler Murray will show up and put on a show.
So going on to Cowboys-Rams. I have the Cowboys winning this game because their offensive line for the Rams don't look that great right now, and the Cowboys defense looks solid. So based off that alone, I'm just going to keep it short and simple and say the Cowboys defense better than the Rams offensive line. Cowboys are going to beat the Rams.
I'm riding the Cooper Rush train right now, and the Cowboys should not beat the Rams. They shouldn't, but I think they're going to. And Trayvon Diggs looked outstanding last week for the Cowboys, and the Rams did not against the 49ers. So that's the one drawback that I have is that the Rams didn't do well last week, so they have like a more inkling to do really well this week. But, Cooper Rush, 3-0, I think, for the Cowboys, while he's in there, of course. So I'm just going to ride the Cooper Rush train, and I'm going to say Cowboys are going to win a close one in the 33-30.
I am here for the quarterback controversy in Dallas, and I think we're going to get it because I'll agree with you. I think Cooper Rush is about to go 5-0 as a starter for the Cowboys, and, I think it's going to be a really good game against the Rams for him. But ultimately, I think the Cowboys, like Jordan said, the Cowboys defense is just going to pick apart that O-line and get Matt Stafford quite a bit during that game.
No, Bengals-Ravens. This one should be a shootout. I'm really looking forward to this game, but I would say Bengals are going to win. Only because I feel like the Bengals have better offensive weapons and T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase needs to step up, but T. Higgins is looking really good. So Burrow is looking back to his dominant self where he left off in the Super Bowl pretty much. And I think the Ravens just blow games a lot. They blew it against the Bills. They blew it against the Dolphins. So I'm gonna ride with the Bengals on this one.
I'm right there with you, and I'm sorry, Luke, because I know you're a Ravens fan. So, but you can defend your case maybe in a little bit. But I think the Bengals look back to their normal selves, and I will say the Ravens really blew that game last week. I think were they up 20-3? Yeah. They were up 20-3 last week, and they lost 23-20. I don't think they scored in the second half. Yeah, they didn't score in the second half. Thanks for confirming that, Luke. So the Ravens just looked. I know the Bills are a great team. Don't get me wrong. Bills are a great team, and they stepped up in the second half to win that game. But the Ravens just what did they go for it? Yeah, they went for it on fourth down and fourth and goal, and they could have kicked the field goal. But whatever, I'll leave it up to the coaches to make those decisions. But I'm gonna pick the Bengals. They're looking strong. I would love to see a shootout here. Jamar Chase for I don't know, Duvernay. Has he been popping off or not really?
Jamar Chase, Lamar Jackson.
Jamar Chase and Lamar Jackson, yeah. Jamar and Lamar. The two of them are going to go shot for shot, even though they play different positions. I would like to see like a 40-point game, but I think the Bengals are winning it.
Give me the Ravens to bounce back this week. Obviously, I'm gonna take my team here, but I do think the Ravens defense is eventually just going to wake up and realize, hey, we have to finish out games, and I think this week would be a good week to do it. I think the Ravens will get off to a hot start like they always do. But give me the Ravens to maintain that start and take out the Bengals this week, especially with that Bengals O-line looking just slightly suspect all the time right now.
Mm-hmm. Going on to the last game, Monday night, Raiders against the Chiefs. And I'll just let you guys start. Who do you think is going to win this one?
Chiefs are winning this one. Raiders are coming off their first win, I believe. Yeah, first win last week against the Broncos. Right? Yeah. That's right. The Broncos scored 23 points, which was their highest point total this year, which is really sad. So if the Raiders are giving up that many points to the Broncos, who are struggling heavily offensively, now you hand it over to the Chiefs, who are, of course, the Chiefs, and you got Patrick Mahomes there, and he's not really taking that big of an impact with Tyreek Hill not in there. He's just making it up with Travis Kelce. Hopefully, Juju Smith-Schuster. He's starting to do a little bit better. I'm liking it a little more for my fantasy team, but also in general, of course, not just for my fantasy team. What are you talking about? So I'm picking the Chiefs, blow out the Raiders.
Give me the Raiders to absolutely get demolished by the Chiefs. It's not going to be very close in my mind. I really had high hopes for this Raiders team coming in. I thought that they were going to be a lot better than they have been, and they've just kind of disappointed me. I think this could be a trap game for the Chiefs, but I think the Chiefs are just going to show up and be like, yo, we're the Chiefs. We don't really need Tyreek Hill. I'm Patrick Mahomes. I can throw the football wherever I want and however I want, and it'll somehow make a touchdown. So I'll take the Chiefs by 14.
I agree with you guys. The Chiefs have a great offense. Patrick Mahomes can do anything, but I'm going with the Raiders in this one. Josh Jacobs had a great week last week, going 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think Devontae Adams and Derek Carr can do something on Monday night, something special. And I feel like they have a really good duo together. It hasn't really produced that much for the start of the season, but I feel like Monday night they can just show off, and I think the Raiders will pull off an insane upset against the Chiefs.
All right, well, we'll see what happens, but yeah, I like the pick.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, that has been all for this week. Stay tuned for next week.
Brand new show.
For our new show.
Thank you,
This
Luke.
is my first time hosting, so I don't really know what to say to wrap it up, but thank you guys for joining.
Mm-hmm. Luke might be here in another week. I think one of us might be out again, but you'll see Luke from time to time. So thank you again, Luke, for joining our show this week.
So welcome.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening, and thank you, Ryan and Luke, of course, and see you guys next week.